Okay, so why don't we go ahead and get started. My name is Scott Herron. I'm a reference librarian in adult services, and on behalf of our entire library staff, I'd like to welcome you to our program this afternoon. This program is made possible by the Friends of the Eugene Public Library and the Eugene Public Library Foundation, two great groups that raise a lot of money for the library for collections, databases, all sorts of things. We are right in the middle of our summer reading series, which goes until middle August. And you can sign up for summer reading by going to our website, and if you agree to read a book this summer, you can enter your name in a raffle for all sorts of great stuff donated by businesses around town. So I'd encourage you to do that. We also have a lot of programs we've been doing over the last month. We had Roy speak here a few weeks ago. We did a poetry workshop last week. And we have a number of local and national authors speaking, as well as a lot of workshops. I put this bookmark in the back. It tells you everything we're doing here at the library, all our programs, so take a look at that. And before I go any further, I just wanted to say that this program, as well as our poetry workshop last week, would not have been possible without Paulette and Stephen here, because they did almost all the work. He organized it, so I want to give Stephen a big hand. Thank you very much, Stephen. He's been a big supporter of the library, and we really appreciate everything he's done for us. So thanks again for coming. I'm going to turn it over to Stephen.
Scott's tall. Hello everybody, and thank you for coming out today. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to speak of the unspeakable, of the heartbreaking and tragic shooting that occurred yesterday in Aurora, Colorado. I know you probably all have read the news or heard or seen it. When something like this happens and it hits the spotlight on such a large scale, I believe it affects and touches us all. And I think that it is because it is symbolic of how we all feel when tragedies occur in our own lives or when we lose a loved one. So I would like to just ask you for a moment of silence in remembrance for those who were injured or lost their lives in yesterday's tragic events, and for those families who lost loved ones in this tragedy and all the tragedies in our country and around the world. Thank you very much. Okay, welcome to today's exciting poetry event. This is a two-part part two of our summer reading series poetry events at the Eugene Public Library. Part one was a basic poetry workshop, which took place last Saturday here in this room. Some of the people that were at that workshop are here today, so good to see you guys. Today's event is a showcase of local poets with an open mic reading in the final hour. Here to entertain you today will be literary poets, performance poets, a scene from a poetic opera, a cowboy-style poet, and an artist poetry exhibit. So sit back, relax, enjoy, have some refreshments, have some coffee or tea, and a wonderful afternoon is in front of you. We would like to thank the Eugene Public Library for hosting these events, and their adult services librarian, Scott Herron, who you just met, for his unwavering support and hard work in making these events possible. Please give Scott a hand. We would also like to say a special thanks to our co-sponsors, Groundwaters Magazine and Mid-Valley Willamette Writers. Pat Edwards, who's the editor of Groundwaters. Are you here yet, Pat? No, she said she'd be here, but a little later. And also, is Valerie Willman or Anthony St. Clair here? No, okay. Mid-Valley Willamette Writers, they're the co-chairs of the Mid-Valley Willamette Writers, and they were a big help in putting this on as well. And I'd like to personally thank my wife Paulette for videotaping the event today, and for setting up all the wonderful refreshments and the coffee and tea. It's It's our own little special blend, so if any of you guys like coffee, try our coffee. And I would like to thank all the others who are helping out here today. Thank you guys all so much. And last, but certainly not least, I'd like to give a special thanks to my fellow panel members who did the poetry workshop with me here last week and who are helping out today as well. If you guys would stand, please. Michele Graf, Roy Cage Johnston, and Jean Marie Purcell. Thank you guys very much. Yes?
And I'm wearing the Willamette, Mid-Valley Willamette Writers hat too. So
Yeah.
we are representing today.
And me as well. So, okay. Now for our program. Let's see. We have some of the people that are reading today have books for sale back there on the tables back there of their work. There's some free literature back in this area, back over here. And also, local artist Ellen Gabehart is here. She'll be sketching some of us as we perform today. So, and she's also working with us on the September event we're going to do here for the Eugene 150th birthday celebration. First up we have Susan Klein. There's an ongoing display on the walls of wonderful artwork and poetry. They are reproductions of digital photo artwork by local artist Susan Klein, accompanied by haiku poems she wrote about each piece. Susan is an established professional artist locally, and she's an established artist of over 30 years. She's sold her work in museum shops, galleries, boutiques, and art and publishing companies in the U.S. and Europe. She was president of New Zone Art Collective in downtown Eugene in 2005 and 2006, and her work has been selected for 2 of Eugene's Mayor's Arts shows. Susan wrote a book of poetry titled Buttocks of My Mind and is working on various other book ideas. Susan, please stand so we can acknowledge you and your work. Please give Susan a round of applause. Thank you for being here. Okay, the first hour of today's event will be a showcase of literary traditional poetry, beginning with today's keynote reader, Ralph Salisbury. Ralph Salisbury really needs no introduction, but he is the winner of River Teeth's 2012 Literary Nonfiction Book Prize and the Rockefeller Bellagio Award in Poetry and Fiction. Ralph's 11th book of poems, Like Sun in Storm, is due out from Habit of Rainy Nights Press in October of 2012. Like his previous books of poems and short fiction, it evokes his Cherokee, Shawnee, Irish, English, American heritage. He has presented his work on stage, on radio, and on TV in the US and Canada, Europe, and India. His poem in the Children's Museum in Nashville was published in the New Yorker in 1960 and has attracted attention as a precursor to the contemporary Native American literary movement. In selecting his Rainbows of Stone as an Oregon Book Award finalist, Maxine Kuhlman wrote, "Nature in Ralph Salisbury's conception is a presence to be addressed. His book deserves a broad audience." His recent books, 2009, are Blind Pumper at the Well, Salt Press, Cambridge, UK, The Indian Who Bombed Berlin, Fiction, Michigan State University Press, and Light from a Bullet Hole, Poems New and Selected, Silverfish Review Press, nominated for the Pulitzer Prize. Born of Cherokee Shawnee storyteller, singer father, and a storytelling Irish-American mother, Ralph Salisbury grew up hunting and trapping for meat and pelts and working on his family's farm, which had no electricity or running water. Through Air Force service, he earned 6 years of university education and has worked at writing, editing, translating, and teaching writing and literature from 1950 to the present. Though he has lived and worked among the intelligentsia of many nations, his writing comes from being a questing, mixed-race, working-class individual in a violent world, and he says that his work is offered in the spirit of human goodness, which unites all people in the eternal struggle against evil, a struggle to prevail against global extinction. Ralph Salisbury is a professor emeritus at the University of Oregon. He helped create their MFA program and has taught there since 1960. I consider him to be the reigning father of our local poetry community here in Eugene. Please give a warm welcome to Ralph Salisbury.
So thank you, Stephen, and thank the library for hosting all of us here. Thank all of you for coming in on a lovely day when you ought to be down by the river. So I think I really appreciate that introduction, Stephen, and I realize I've accomplished a few things, but I think being a teacher for many years, I realize there's kind of two aspects to poetry, and one is the community you're in, and the other is then you seem to go out on the battleground of recognition around the world and so on. You can't do either one without the other, I think. So it's one of my great pleasures is to be a part of this community since 1960, and I've just seen one of my favorite heart doctors, Dr. Ram, haven't seen for some years. And I'm happy that I'm still part of this community. And my heart is still doing what it should. Well, my memoir will not be out until next April, I think. But they've sent me the picture of the cover, which you probably can't see from there. But anyway, this proves to me they're making progress. They're working on it. Today, since we're a poetry event, I'll just sort of hang in there, although you see at the end I've cheated a little bit, and I'll read a piece that could be either prose or poetry, and to me, they're pretty much the same thing. I thought I'd read from the book that's for sale back there, try to make a little money while I'm standing here. But seriously, it's done by Silverfish Review, a nonprofit press right here in Eugene. And it's the book that was nominated by Silverfish for the Pulitzer Prize. And since I'm not from back east establishment, it didn't win the prize, but it's nice to have been nominated. And it's a kind of a winner book because it's a selected book, poems from several years of books. So it's a real bargain. You get about 5 books for the price of one, I think. I'm going to read just a few poems from that to show where I came from, and then I'll read to my new book of poems, and then I'll be quiet and turn it over to some other people. First poem I'd like to read is dedicated to my 2 sons, Jeff and Brian Salisbury. And as you see, it's about them. It's literally kind of taking off from being at breakfast with them in the morning and looking at Spencer's Butte. And you'll know that, but people in New York won't know that's the mountain that we're talking about. Come near the western edge, I try a last myth for the childhood of my sons. The giant is eating the mountain, I tell my children, while eating cereal with them. A gray mustache is working slowly down the last green slope before ours. It is a very large mountain, and mostly granite. It is very hard. It is much harder than limestone, which was formed from small shellfish under the sea in Iowa. Our old home under ocean? Yes, once upon a time, an ocean ate little Iowa. Back when there was Indians, oh, my sons, it was not the ocean that ate the Indians. And it was not medicine men who made the ocean bleed. Before I was a baby, before Iowa was a part of the United States, or even a state of mind in a settler, before man, before words became language, long before Hiroshima dissolved like sugar in your cereal. Huh? Oh, my neighbors, I whisper, because I fear huge ears and the tongue that may crush me and my 2 sons. Oh, my neighbors, beyond the gray mustache through which a dying father speaks. Oh, my neighbors, the giant is eating very slowly just now. The mountain is hard. It is not easy eating. It must be difficult to live with an appetite as huge as a cloud's. Live well, my neighbors, living still, for all will be green a little longer. Man was made to eat. A little conversation is said to help digestion. Laugh to end with a reassuringly familiar phrase, make, and I am serious about this, make a good meal. When I was putting this book together for Silverfish, it was kind of a trip. There was a lot of emotion connected with things, and I won't go into that at all right now, but you can imagine how it was going over all those years of my life, and poems I published back when I was 20 years old and just getting started publishing around the world, and the realities that brought back to me. So, not all my poetry is too grim, I think. I remember reading this poem the first time at a picnic that Bill Stafford and his family and a bunch of neighbors had up in the mountains here in Oregon. And it's a poem called Not Yet. This pine has lost its brown scabbard. No, this is a picnic. This is not a mountain, a garden for pinyon pine squirrels who dine on pinyon pine nuts, triangular jewels which taste like perfume. The world is so damn big you have to bury yourself in a book to know your home. Is a pea in a mouth so huge a pea is not worth swallowing. Humility then, this pine's a toothpick, the earth a fist, the sun a shoulder socket, and upon the invisible wrist, a dot, a hawk's a tiny, tiny timepiece. No, there is no hawk, no man, no sun, no world. There are these words. And then, in them, a pinyon pine squirrel flaunts an absurdly scruffy tail, a scruffy flag in these invisible miles we, on this picnic, no one came to breathe. And he, the squirrel, becoming a skeleton in a brain tiny between huge wings, speaks to his mate, their vanishing bodies telling the sky all that a poem can say. The next poem I'm going to read has a history that's in part mine and in part all that of all of us. And when the bombs, when the airplanes flew into the New York Trade Building and into the Pentagon, I was up and around, and our daughter lived about 3 miles from one of the trade buildings, and we were very worried about her. And so we finally heard she was okay. I wrote this poem, and it's called Before 9/11/01 and After, for our daughter Martina. as two historical events that you being Oregonians may well know, but we have the doubtful honor of being one of the few places, maybe the only place in which Japanese gunfire was set during World War II, and Fort Astoria, and we have the sad honor of being one place where American citizens were killed on this soil during the war. And a Sunday school teacher and her children saw an airplane saw a parish balloon coming down in a tree, or it had come down the tree, and they were curious, and they went to see it, and it was swaying. I happen to know about this balloon because at that time I was flying in a B-24 bomber and patrolling over Oregon, Idaho, and we were looking for these Japanese balloons that were drifting over. And so I knew what the Sunday school teacher and the others didn't know, that they had not only incendiary bombs to set the forest on fire, but they also had one fragmentation bomb, which is not very big, but would explode and would kill all the people within reach of the explosion. And that's what happened. It just probably the balloon swayed in the wind and the tree fuse hit something, and that was the death for the people. Okay, that's a little Oregon history in the back of the poem, and this is the poem itself. Before 9/11/01 and after, for our daughter Martina. Oregon coastal cannon could not still one from a submarine, and the Sunday school class was sent to heaven because we machine gunners training to kill others who tried to down our bombers had failed to see a Japanese balloon as it had descended bearing bombs intended to burn acres and acres of billions of dollars worth of centuries of trees whose great-grandparents were not even cones when the galleon, hold empty for gold, sailed further offshore than any spear could reach, and cannonaded villages which might have resisted invasion. As steadfast as those sacrificing lives to their conception of God, my countrymen are offering what syllables as beautiful as petals wilting have always said, and recalling Nazi firing squads eliminating future sabotage, I take no satisfaction from Afghanistan's or Iraq's destruction. Instead, I hear the dead whose deaths I and millions of my generation intended, their homes blown into tombs, become the sorrowing tones of a friend. The conqueror's our language, now his. At 17, a volunteer. At 25, a resistor. I live by the words of orators. At 75, survivor of a heart attack and cancer. I heed the silence of thousands in my daughter's voice, phoning 3 miles from explosion to reassure her mother and me just after the World Trade Center went down. Now we take a look into the future, a brief look into my new book. It's divided in a number of sections. Oh, thanks. Thank you. So, a preview of coming attractions. Mill Pond on Way to Work. There are a number of work poems in here from my past. Black ducks on a brown pond. Pepper shook on the soup's glistening skin. 8 hours to feed your family ahead. Light of the mill, glass gems of a dress as white as a fog thrown down in drunken relinquishment. A broom all you'll be dancing with tonight. 8 hours until pepperless soup and lucky ducks gone south. Well, as Stephen's introduction said, I'm of mixed race, and as you can see, I'm fairly pale. I think it's a simple explanation is Henry Miller, great American prose writer, said in the film Reds, I think there was just as much fucking going on then as now. I can account for things far on my Indian side as far back as my grandmother's mother, my great-grandmother, but it's a rather mixed history back there. An Indian child's history of the Great American Depression. Dad was afraid Bad Hoover would get another chance to steal our food, and the game with Valentines, diamonds, clubs, and spades crayoned onto politicians' cards was hearts. And salt and lard tasted good on corn, pigs ate too, but ours was split and softened from parching in the oven, for whose fire I'd lugged armfuls of twigs. And I was so hungry my belly would growl like the mean tomcat who killed kittens. But Daddy and Mommy always let me win. The poem I'll conclude with is, again, from my own childhood, and I guess it's a book which sets a more positive tone than maybe the times deserve, but it's a poem called Throne. My father's mother used to tell these stories, and her stories of children lost in the woods. She'd always say, and their feet were just like ice. And their feet were just like ice. So I'll conclude with this one, and it's entitled Poem. It means throne. Feet just like ice were my Cherokee Shawnee granny's English words for children lost in the woods. Woods lost to my other ancestors' money-making blades. What were they like to be lost in? Forebears of maples I bled for sweetness at breakfast. Centuries of growth joining hours of my own. What was it like to be lost among counselor wolves and ancestor bears and raven mocker witches, shooting star wings, circling earth thrown by storytelling tongues from tombs, toes, icicle roots, a smelt. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ralph.
Thank you, Stephen.
It's easier. So glad you could be here with us today. Thank you.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Up next we have Michele Graf. Michele is one of the panel members for these events. She also helped me to create today's program. She did a lovely job on it. Michele is a writer, editor and eclectic reader of poetry, fiction, and essays, poetry editor for the award-winning e-zine Apollo's Lyre.
I like Lear, but it's
Lear,
supposed to be
okay.
liar.
She and her husband spent 10 years living and traveling in a motorhome all over the US and Canada, and she's writing a book about those experiences. She's a member of the Willamette Writers, Lane Literary Guild, and the Oregon Poetry Association, head of support staff for the annual Muse Online Writers Conference. Her book, Lifelines, was published on 11/11/11. Please welcome Michele Graf.
Thank you. Thank you. Am I doing, I've got this right now, yes. It is delightful to be able to be part of this program and to follow you, Ralph. Thank you very much. Enjoy. Okay. And since Stephen decided to put me on the piece of this that is considered sort of traditional, I thought I would start with one of my most traditional poems, which grew out of an early iteration of my book Lifelines, which is back there, when we were organizing our thoughts and poetry around the Greek mythological muses, for poetry, epics, history, comedy, tragedy, hymns, dancing, singing. So this is one for Cleo, who is the muse of history, the giver of fame, and source of inspiration for public and professional success. And Cleo has to watch her heart because she can be swayed by pretty words, and she can sway also to remember the past as it wants to be seen rather than as it was. And only she knows for certain whether truth exists and where it begins. So, this is a sonnet called Questioning Cleo. Cleo, are you Shakespeare's muse? Did you whisper secrets in his dreams? Move Macbeth's great Birnam wood, Cleopatra's barge and asp, and Hamlet's hesitation to be or? Are you the sonnet's voice? Friends, Romans, countrymen, my tales, imprecise memories, rotting bones and baking bread, howling pain and children's laughter. Can you taste the mead and the mutton? Feel the heat of oozing blood and buckskin, teasing notes of lute quiver through the earth? Cleo, do you mourn the twists and gaps of logic, or flinch when lyric fills in to match the mood? Political polish and victor spin, we all know, who controls the flow of words controls the universe. And what we know of Julius Caesar's world, we know by bard scratches, songs and phrases that spill from ancient tongues, specters, ancestral ghosts. Do they speak truth, dear Cleo, keeper of history? Or is all the world simply a stage, with script writ by the imp of time? This one is not a sonnet, and it's called The Rose. On Friday the 13th of December, 1968, the wind blew in San Antonio, blew through in rolling sobs. Tractors never stopped sucking earth in 6-foot holes, carefully marked section letters, and 3-digit homes. Not enough time to pause for taps, played repeatedly for all who came to rest. I offered a single blood-red rose to the sloped, sealed box. All eyes and breath followed the gust that feathered her petals, willed the wind to let her be. She held firm, that rose. Her scent echoed the ache of saying goodbye to my father, finally back from Vietnam. how I wish he could see me now. This one is about Harley the Wonder Poodle. We rescued a standard poodle about 4 years ago, and we were her third home, and her third permanent home, and she had a couple of fosters in the middle before she came to live with us. Now, her intuitive sense and behavior, they bring me back to myself when I forget. And so here's a hug for Harley. She cries for attention, security, fears a change she's sensed before. Less time, fewer hugs, no toy time, too busy. Her family is drifting away. Just when it was safe to be herself, cocky, assured, make demands, and simply be, it feels dangerous and tense. Her family is drifting away. She tries to read the signs, know how to act, stop and test the air, and guesses wrong again, each time mourning. Her family is drifting away. And soon will be hers no more. Unwanted, unneeded, unloved, homeless, bewildered. She cries for attention. Her family is drifting away. I finally hear her cry, feel her fear, and see my tension. I realize this is how it must have been each time her family gave her away. How can I tell her it isn't so? I can't. I can only be here, embrace her heart, envelop her with spirit, build her trust again. She's our family, and we'll never give her away. How's my time? This one is one of a series that I wrote about my fountain pens, all kinds of marvelous paper, and trying to coax the muse into behaving once I had everything all set up the way it was supposed to be. And it's called The Sea of Words. Ink flows like river full of life, sometimes easy and smooth, dances over stones, around snags, follows stage direction on cue. Corps de ballet, they pivot and bow in sync. Ink sticks, won't flow, like drops lost in side eddies. Circular moves when they do something, otherwise stagnant, just sitting there, waiting to be unblocked. Ink sits, bottled, waits for someone to release its energy. Splash outrageous thoughts onto dead trees, transforming to half-human form. Sometimes able to stand upright with proud spine. Ink bleeds the wounds and pain, cleanses mind and body like leeches still used to draw poisons from the soul. Ink is the sea, nourishing, healing, when it isn't the water demon whose kiss drowns. And this one, let's see, who did we have? I had a discussion earlier with someone, yes, you were there, isn't it? Okay, about sleep and siestas. And this is my poem about sleep and lack thereof. Sleep escapes me routinely, almost every night, lures me to bed, to rest, then opens the crammed computer trainload of thought, woulda, coulda, shoulda, regrets, missed shots, wrong steps, unkept promises. Sleep escapes on schedule, like the 11:05 flight that's landed elsewhere due to bad weather or foggy feelings that just make a safe landing impossible. Sleep escapes only to bleed into time that belongs to other purposes, like the loud latecomer at the theater wearing oppressive aftershave, disrupting those around him. Sleep breaks my heart on schedule, tempting, taunting. I'm a junkie and it knows it. I need it, crave it, and pay the steep price in hope and desperation nightly. It's the lottery ticket that comes so close, but rarely hits. Ah, but when it does. And I'm going to finish with one that is an original scribble that, I don't know, we have several people here from the class last week. Is anybody reading one of the poems from the fantasy poem that you wrote with somebody else? No? Okay, okay. I don't want to step on that one, but here's one. While we had everybody doing this particular exercise, we had, Stephen had come up with these incredible headlines from a variety of places like, yeah, the tabloids, you know, National Enquirer and things like that, and he cut them up and put them on a hat, and we drew out these things. I don't even remember the name of this one. Do you remember the name? I've got the ice.
Prehistoric snowman found some buried or something.
Yes. So there was a prehistoric snowman involved. Not a fossil, but a prehistoric snowman. And the way we did this exercise is that one person wrote one line, the other one wrote the second line, and then we alternated back and forth. So, Steve, this is our collective genius work here. I just think it's a cool poem. Okay. So this is about that snowman. Palm Springs was aghast today. In the outskirts of the desert, fossilized snowman lurched to light. But how could this be possible? Ah, global warming in reverse. He was enshrined in crystal ice, sat atop a podium. Inside, I could see he was actually alive. Confused but curious about our world, he explained he was from a time forgotten and had no more cell minutes left to contact the dinosaurs he lived with. To say he'd be a little late tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michele.
Eclectic poetry.
If I would make a little request of all our readers to enter on this side here where the mat is. It's designed to just take you up easily to the podium, okay? All right, thanks again, Michele. Up next is Charles Thielman. Raised in Charleston, South Carolina and Chicago, educated at red brick universities and on city streets, Charles has worked as a youth counselor, truck driver, city bus driver, and enthused bookstore clerk. Recently married on a Kauai beach, he is the organizer and host of the third Saturday Reader Series at Tsunami Books, which, by the way, will be happening right after this event tonight. Charles' chapbook, Into the Owl Dreamed Night, is available from Uttered Chaos Press. His poems have been accepted by literary journals, such as the Pedestal, Poetry 365, the Criterion, India, Poetry Salzburg, Austria, Poetry Kanto, Japan, Tiger's Eye, Full Cycle, Fault Lines, and Uphook Press. Please welcome Charles Thielman.
Thank you, and thank you to all who came here on this beautiful day.
You can pull it up if you like.
This
Yeah. There you go.
And much thanks also to the library and the Library Foundation for all the pro poetry work they do, providing this fine space, and probably not a few cookies as well. So I'll be reading from my a few poems from my book, Into the Owl Dreamed Night. It is available at Tsunami Books as well as online. I did not bring extra copies. Sorry about that. The first poem I'm going to read is titled Community Swelter. Community Swelter, and it's about a park in Portland, but it could be a park in any major city where lots of people gathered on hot summer nights and basically stayed as cool as they could. Community Swelter. The heat drags its knuckles over blacktop, brick, arms, faces. Jack boots the street as neon samsara drift from the heart of our bricked square out to the curb where coffee shop workers are delivering ice waters to the street urchins. Scooping a ice cube onto her neck, she's trying to triage her malaise with iced coffee, relief dissolving her street mask for a moment. Summer night, draping damp linens over city intaglio, blue glyphs of car exhaust above intersections, verve and pocked nerve hinged on the dark geometries of power lines. No seats inside, she fingers another cube, up an arm this time, beveling the edge she's honed all day at her job, unloading boxcars to load trucks. Square denizens promenade and sweat, cop on horseback beside a sidewalk tree, regulating the pulse as a corner sax player lets fly with a freighted wail. Notes like orchids spun down canyons, drawing stragglers to our shared swelter. Not a few city squares have been pretty hot this past month or so. Okay. Let's see here. Here's one that will be appearing in a magazine out of New York called Great Weather for Media. Those New Yorkers sure come up with some titles for the magazines. Anyway, this one is titled Translating Gathered Light, and that's kind of what poets and artists do, writers and artists do. Go out, gather the grist, and translate it onto paper. Translating gathered light. He gnaws through the brick walls laid by his grandfathers and his father. He gnaws out various speeches like beads drying on his tongue. He is ready to river gems past the monotone inhale. Toxins dissolve, the pearls dispense. He sees a wave building, carrying hot debris and bred angers, statues and columns melting inside black rains as needs gain volume. Dune grass sticking on a blue jean leg, he has left the pace mined from unloading boxcars to the tide line's broken shells, stepped inside a whispering current while so many machete through green, greasing the slide into a dark cabaret. Assigned scripts pinned between ribs as dusk circles the veins of their eyes. He fingers the agates in a pocket and wonders if he could sense their gathered light, then translate it into colors brushed onto the canvas filling via spine-fed brushstrokes, easel just visible through that cabin window. Journal on the table holding rivulets of dawn thoughts. Journal on the table holding rivulets of dawn thoughts. The pulse, his self-portrait growing, his face is reflected on glass as the incoming tide feeds the shoreline background. Clouds, yes, on the horizon as he speaks the Spanish word for storm, borrasca, for rain, lluvia, amor. Speaking of amor, here's a poem for my lovely wife. We got married on Kauai Beach a couple of Februarys ago. We were walking towards the beach, it was still raining, and got to the beach, and the sun came out. And then we went walking to afterwards, walking to the restaurant, and it started raining again. Most propitious. Anyway, writing as she sleeps. And I should also mention that this is in this anthology here that has just recently come out, titled What the River Brings. It's Oregon River Poems. Writing as she sleeps. Twice kissed towards the open blue doors of dream, he's awakened by an unwritten poem. Her tea steeping, he writes at the table, a 3-year-old's handprint on the half-shut sliding glass door. A moth ticks on the screen between lit kitchen and first wren. Reds and yellows burning across sky as his pen rivers a deep song of gratitude. Here's a poem that was much helped by many of us are in critique groups, and this poem has certainly helped. The critique group that I'm in. April wrens, city trees, pulse hovering above paper. This pen inks the memory of a dream as a wren announces the approach of sunrise, like a sculptor shaping the eyes of Adonis. Gust push and pull window panes into reflections of now and now as downtown cottonwoods shower the windshields of early commuters. My spine bows the bright arrow of a line across this morning page as a friend in black leather downtown, as a friend downtown in black leather and mirror shades combs her long black hair over her shoulders, her kabuki reflected on bank windows, and she toes a curve and reaches for a sun slant as dawn ricochets down glass and steel. Oftentimes, when in Portland, for instance, after work, I would go to a jazz bar called Jazz to Opus to unwind. And it was a great scene there, and this poem is about that. It's titled Jazz Sanctuary. Carrying spurs of traffic staccato, I retreat to jazz to Opus from driving city bus. Yellow brake squeal turns, eardrum lanced, hair trigger sidewalks prepped for war, lined with saplings. I retreat through thick wood doors, long fingers thrumming bass, blued drinks slaking August throats. My list of angry speeches left to simmer as guitar burns a mirror of fire, piano smoking. My back relaxing into the sways of this good time crowd full of color. A tall bronze jazz woman broils out a love song and spoons it out, musk sauce brushed into marrow. All of us down for this cool bomb, spooning jazz into full canvas throats, straight from soul onto scotch burning ice. Oh, she throws her full indigo song into the rhythm-drummed floor, into the rhythm-thrummed air, fingers snapping, all here, and the specific names of trees ease into murals of shade, ease into murals of our children holding their arms out, waiting for doves. Waiting for doves. Aren't we all? Okay. And this is direct from I drove Tri-Mite bus, and one of my favorite bus lines was up through northeast Portland. And there's one layover zone there that is kind of dicey. Gang members on both sides of the street, and cops going up and down the street. Anyway, this is titled Trafficker, and this is about a young man who was obviously, very obviously to me, a spotter for people who were looking to buy drugs. Trafficker, stepping back from the edge of a streetlight pool, his lines of preludes are gang glyphs on a wall near his station as he whistles at night traffic. With streetwise finesse, he unsleeves a flick of his right hand, lighter palm catching light, signaling a brother spotter hid behind half-open drapes or twilight. Then he long eyes my stance, my parked, empty, idling bus with two-way radio, the quick sig flares within my smoke cloud while I stay between sidewalk and curb. Satisfied that his warning is heeded, he watches for cops and customers. He whistles his teenage octave at slow rolling cars, a toned magnet inviting headlights and people to bend towards a white lined silk finale. His eulogy hangs as a dialect pleated into the arms of his dark coat. Waiting for sunrise. How am I doing with time? So this is a poem asks us to think of raindrops as children of a storm. And it's in 3 parts. And it's about a person who's getting ready for work towards the end there. So, children as raindrops. Raindrops as children of a storm. Waiting for sunrise. The children of 4 days of rain, having left the arms of spruce, pool above roots and listen as the black-haired goats of evening slip inside loam. River crests splice her city, workday ramps flared with truck thunder, as she arranges fragments of self, mirror shards glued with Java. Red Frisbee launched, chased by her black lab, hot Java mug on porch rail. Bird songs cross dawn canvas, the sky before work above her dream-seated veins. And I'll do 2 more. Singing to a mirage. October maples flare on a hill. 66 Volkswagen van chasing sunset, Minnesota to Wyoming, to Boise, to Eugene. 66 VW van chasing sunset. Cigarette smoke blue lines out his wing window as he flies down 2-lane back blacktop. En route to beach walks, he belts out a love song for the blazing horizon, wants ricocheting rib to spine. Lit memories strirate rear view, mirror shadows, as lost pecks at his eyes, and he peels layers of erasures away from his pulse and breath. Flying down blacktop, singing to a mirage, intent on growing new skin clothed in wave spray. He'll camp facing east and wait for the crescent moon, then tunnel a dream inside birdsong. I'll end with this one. This is a 2-part poem. Windowsill and altar. Lit votive candles tongue the air, horizon red with the approach of dawn. Brake lights strobe downtown. The birds do not want us to rise. The results of gunshots, too well known. Headline stitch a fatwa across each white-eyed gaze as time reaches from mirror shades, eyes like shot deer, salting their wounds in Pacific waves. Lit votives tongue the air. She murmurs inside a dream cave beyond moonset, nudging into a warm scent. Fossil wings gaining feathers, she flies unalone, her lover quietly placing her teeth close. Rich spruce silhouetted by dawn, rush hour firing up. This city ready to splice through faith at the drop of a sneer. Sidewalk crowds gazing at sliced sky, cement, children at bus stops making churches with their hands. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charles. Okay, we'll take a short break here, about 10 minutes, and then we'll come back with some more.